Part 1, The Beginning of the UFO Age, 1947 to 1952. In the summer of 1947, America was still healing from the wounds of war. Soldiers had come home, factories roared again, and the nation looked toward a bright new future. But above that calm post-war sky, something else was moving, something mankind couldn't explain. It began with a man named Kenneth Arnold, a pilot flying over Mount Rainier, Washington. He reported seeing 9 shiny disks flying in formation, faster than any known aircraft. When reporters asked him to describe what he saw, Arnold compared them to saucers skipping over water. And just like that, the world met a new phrase, flying saucers. The story spread across every newspaper, every radio broadcast. For the first time, the idea of visitors from beyond Earth felt possible. Then, only weeks later, Roswell, New Mexico. A rancher found strange metallic debris scattered across his field. The army arrived. The first headline read, RAF captures flying disc in Roswell region. But by the next morning, the story changed. It was just a weather balloon. The contradiction lit a fire of suspicion. Why did the U.S. Army announce a flying disc one night and deny it the next morning? Why were witnesses told to stay silent? For the first time, the American public began to ask, what is the government hiding from us? As the Cold War began and tensions with the Soviet Union rose, Washington grew nervous. If strange objects were crossing U.S. skies, could they be Soviet weapons, or something else entirely? To calm the public and protect national security, the U.S. Air Force created its first official UFO investigation, Project Sign. The goal, find the truth behind the sightings. But as reports flooded in, something became clear, there was more in the sky than anyone expected. Over 700 sightings were filed in less than a year. Pilots, radar operators, even military personnel reported unknown craft moving at impossible speeds, performing turns no jet could match. Project Sign's final report concluded that UFOs were real and not imaginary, suggesting they might be extraterrestrial in origin. But that truth never reached the public. Washington shut it down, replaced it with Project Grudge, and ordered the files buried. The age of secrecy had begun. Part 2, Shadows over the Cold War, 1952 to 1953. By the early 1950s, the world had split in two. The United States and the Soviet Union stared at each other across an iron curtain, each armed with weapons powerful enough to erase civilization. And in that tension-filled sky, lights began to move, silent, brilliant, and unknown. In the summer of 1952, Washington, D.C. itself became the stage. For 2 consecutive weekends, radar screens at National Airport lit up with mysterious targets. Jet interceptors were scrambled, but every time they closed in, the objects vanished, only to reappear miles away. The press called it the Washington Flap. Crowds gathered outside the Capitol, staring upward. Was America under surveillance, from Moscow or from the stars? Reporters demanded answers. President Truman called in the Air Force. The Pentagon's message was calm, rehearsed, and thin, there is no cause for alarm. These are temperature inversions on radar. Yet pilots swore they saw glowing orbs accelerating faster than any aircraft known to man. Behind closed doors, generals weren't calm. They feared panic, yes, but they feared the truth even more. And so a new program was born, larger, deeper, and colder in purpose. It was called Project Blue Book. Its headquarters, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Its mission, investigate, catalog, and, if possible, explain every UFO sighting in America. To the public it sounded like science. In reality, it was control. Part 3, Inside Project Blue Book. The first head of Blue Book was Captain Edward Ruppelt, a disciplined officer who believed in facts, not fantasy. He insisted on a neutral term, unidentified flying object, UFO, to remove the ridicule of flying saucer. Ruppelt's team gathered witness reports, photographs, radar logs, and physical traces. For each case they tried to find a cause: misidentified stars, weather balloons, atmospheric illusions. But some defied every category. A commercial pilot near Fargo watched a glowing disk pace his DC-3 for 20 minutes. A radar base in Alaska tracked an object changing direction at Mach 4. At a missile site in New Mexico, guards saw a luminous sphere hover silently above nuclear warheads. Ruppelt filed these as unknowns. But as his reports reached Washington, they met an invisible wall. High-ranking officers quietly reclassified the cases, stamping them explained or insufficient data. Publicly, Blue Book was science. Privately, it became propaganda. Still, Ruppelt persisted. He briefed generals, testified before committees, even consulted with scientists like J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer from Northwestern University. Hynek entered as a skeptic. But the deeper he looked, the less skeptical he became. By 1953, Blue Book had investigated over 1,000 sightings. The Air Force wanted closure, not questions. So they convened the Robertson Panel, a group of scientists instructed to end the UFO problem. Their conclusion was simple: UFOs were not a threat, but the belief in them might be. Recommendation: debunk sightings, ridicule witnesses, flood the media with explanations. And so began America's quiet war against its own curiosity. Part 4, Silencing the Sky, 1954 to 1960. Across the nation, strange things still appeared: silver discs over Texas, green fireballs over New Mexico, cigar-shaped crafts over the Great Lakes. Farmers, soldiers, and airline captains reported them. Blue Book collected the data, filed the forms, and buried the truth. Television laughed. Comic books mocked. Little Green Men became a punchline, by design. But inside the military, whispers grew louder. Radar operators saw blips defy physics. Pilots chased objects that outran them with ease. Even President Eisenhower reportedly demanded private briefings. The public, lulled by ridicule, moved on. But a few insiders, scientists, intelligence officers, and one determined astronomer, refused to let go. J. Allen Hynek began keeping his own parallel files, documenting cases the Air Force ignored. He started to suspect that Blue Book's real objective wasn't discovery, it was dismissal. By the late 1950s, the space race had begun. Satellites circled Earth, and humanity looked upward with pride. Yet amid that triumph, a darker thought lingered: if we were watching the stars, who, or what, was watching us? Part 5, The Shift, 1961 to 1965. A new decade brought new evidence. Over the Midwest, police officers chased glowing spheres that leapt across counties. In Michigan, hundreds witnessed lights hovering above swamps. The media erupted, Congress demanded answers. The Air Force sent investigators, Hynek among them. He was ordered to calm the press. Under pressure, he blamed the sightings on swamp gas. The phrase became infamous, a symbol of denial. Privately, Hynek was furious. He knew the data didn't fit such an explanation. He began speaking more openly, telling colleagues that some UFOs represented a genuine scientific mystery. Meanwhile, inside Blue Book, leadership changed. Captain Ruppelt was long gone, replaced by officers who treated the project as an obligation, not an investigation. Reports were brushed aside. Files labeled inconclusive piled higher every year. Still, a few cases refused to die, like the 1964 Lonnie Zamora incident in Socorro, New Mexico, where a police officer saw an egg-shaped craft land on desert ground, leaving scorch marks and metal traces. Even the skeptics couldn't explain it. For the first time, the Air Force faced an uncomfortable truth: some of these encounters were real, whatever real meant. Part 6, Exposure, 1966 to 1968. Public trust was fading. Senators demanded transparency. The Air Force, cornered, funded an independent review by the University of Colorado, led by physicist Edward Condon. Officially, it was to provide an objective study. Unofficially, it was to close the matter forever. For 2 years, Condon's committee examined Blue Book's files. Behind the scenes, internal memos revealed bias from the start. The best thing to do would be to debunk the whole subject. When the Condon report was published in 1969, its verdict was decisive: UFO research held no scientific value. That was all Washington needed. Project Blue Book was ordered terminated. The Air Force announced that UFOs posed no threat to national security, and no evidence suggested extraterrestrial origins. Case closed. At least, officially. Yet, even as the ink dried, the contradictions screamed. Of the 12,618 cases Blue Book investigated, 701 remained unexplained. Those files were locked away, classified, archived, forgotten by design. Part 7, The Truth Revealed, post-1969. But truth is stubborn. In the decades that followed, civilians filed Freedom of Information Act requests. Thousands of pages surfaced, blurred, redacted, yet undeniable. Radar traces. Pilot testimonies. Official memos admitting unknowns of genuine significance. Hynek, once the skeptic, became the believer. He founded the Center for UFO Studies, arguing that science had a duty to face the unknown. His transformation mirrored the nation's own unease. If Blue Book was right, why did secrecy persist? If it was wrong, what had been hidden? Then came new programs, ADIP, UAP Task Force, modern names for the same pursuit. Decades after Blue Book's closure, the Pentagon quietly confirmed that unidentified aerial phenomena still intruded upon American airspace. The files had simply changed names, not purpose. And so the story circles back to its beginning. In 1947 a pilot saw 9 shining disks and asked a question. In 1969, the government answered with silence. Today, the sky still asks. Because above the politics, beyond the Cold War, beyond even the stars, there remains one truth: Project Blue Book was never about proving the existence of UFOs. It was about managing belief, deciding what the public was allowed to know, and when. History calls it an investigation. But perhaps it was something deeper, a mirror held up to humanity's fear of the unknown. And until every hidden file is opened, until every unexplained light is understood, the project is not over. It simply has a new name. And the sky remains our greatest secret.